right, Yanks. I'm back to show you how it's done. One Kiwi, one not completely mad Irishman back for another film talk.
How's it going, everybody? Apologies if I sound a little bit croaky. I might have a cold. I don't know, but we're going
You
to
might have.
struggle on.
Don't give it to me. It's digital, but you could compress it down to some kind of zip file and send it to me. Don't do it.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain it was transmitted to me digitally originally when I was first infected. I think it was somebody in the possibly the weird Fantastic Toys team was sick, and then I caught
one
it
of
off
those
them.
40 NFTs.
Yeah, those NFTs, man. Always make sure you check them first. Maybe give them a bit of a clean before you actually open the file. That's just a fair warning.
Nah.
Yeah, we are back. We are here.
Classic Aussie film this week because it is the week of the Anzacs. We had this week, it's actually a public holiday on the day, which is earlier this week, called Anzac Day, funnily enough. Gallipoli, directed by Peter Weir.
Gallipoli. And a movie which I'm somewhat ashamed to say I only watched properly for the first time this week, and then and the reason I'm saying I'm ashamed is because it was such a good movie. I wish I'd watched it a lot earlier than I did. I really enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to having a chat with you about it today and just chatting about what our thoughts and feelings are on it, because I have to say it made quite the impact on me.
Yeah, it's a very well made film, and it is assigned to homework quite often in Australia for high school age kids. Films such as Gallipoli or Breaking More aren't. So some people kind of like might have watched it in high school for their homework or English class, and then they kind of ignore it the rest of their lives. Whereas I discovered this not until my 20s, having moved from New Zealand to Australia, discovering Australian cinema, picking up various books in the public library, talking about 70s and 80s films. And when I got to watch it, I was both a genuine fan of Australian cinema, which I'm definitely going to be talking more about in the next 12 months in various capacities, and also just a fan of Mel Gibson in general as far as films and whatnot. So yeah, I've never had a bad experience with this. Like if you're told to go and watch a film in English class, it can kind of turn you off a film if you have to watch it rather than you want to watch it. I mean, when I was in high school, we had to watch The Third Man, which has Orson Welles, but he's in the film in about 5 minutes, and has a very nice soundtrack in The Third Man with a zither, which is, don't ask me exactly what it's like, a kind of banjo looking thing, like do string instrument. And I remember one time I was walking through Perth City 20 years ago. A guy was actually playing the theme from The Third Man. And it was a French man who was a semi-professional busker. Perth and Fremantle have quite a long history of busking culture. And I saw this guy at the Fremantle train station about 20 years ago, and he was like playing this very distinctive Third Man theme. And I went up to him and went, "It's like a Third Man theme," which I hadn't heard for like a decade since high school. And he's like, yes, I am Christian Mosseri. Oh, yeah. He was full-on French man. And actually had a CD that he had pressed himself and done like a fairly low quality cover, just like an actual commercial CD or for, like a laser printer. And I bought it for like $10-20 and listened to it. And he was bloody good. He had played in pubs all around the world and clubs and stuff. But that's my little diversion, and we'll get back to Gallipoli.
We will return to our high school / secondary school required viewing at some other point.
Well, my copy of Breaking Morant, which was there was 3 Anzac films made back in this era that were very distinctive and of the same era, as well as a TV miniseries. My copy of Breaking Morant, which I was thinking might as well do in next year's Anzac week, I got from my brother. Literally, he had it as a high school assignment and was moving out of the house to go and live in the other suburbs. And he's getting rid of stuff. And I'm like, "You don't want this?" I'm like, "I'll have this." And Breaking Morant and Gallipoli are just 2 all-time classic Aussie films that are fantastic.
Well, we're looking on to next year, which I'm looking forward to watching that one. But it's Gallipoli today. to kick this off. And yeah, I was super impressed with this movie. Like I had a feeling it was going to be good. I knew you probably wouldn't have recommended it to me if it wasn't good. Uh,
I don't usually recommend shit films.
you haven't recommended. Well, to be fair, this is only actually the second Boba Joe show we've done where I haven't um, watched the movie prior to us saying that we're going to
I
do a
think
show.
the other one was Moving, which my missus, she recommended that. I hadn't watched it before, but I watched it a few years back with her, and I was rewatching it again, going, oh, I was just busting a gut laughing at it. I'm like,
Yeah,
what? Should we do that next week? And like, and then you checked it out and you enjoyed it, so we ended up doing that last year, Moving with Richard Pryor, and I had King Kong Bundy in it, of course.
of course, of course. But like it's obviously when you know a film already, it's nice to have a chat about it. But it's also equally as nice when you get to kind of discover something you haven't watched
Yeah,
before, and
yeah. Well, when we did
it's
a
good,
few months back, the Deer Hunter. I mean, I'd watched that before. I've got the DVD. I've got fucking special edition of the DVD. Um, but it had been 10 or 12 years since I watched it. So when I rewatched it a few months back, it was like watching it the first time because I remembered little, the cliff notes, but not all of the details. So it's good that way when you can actually not remember too much and actually just really re-enjoy a film again.
Yeah, and I was kind of getting some deer hunterish vibes from this movie, I have to say. That the whole when it comes to becoming a man and losing your innocence type of thing and heading
Yeah.
off to war, there's definitely a few parallels that could be drawn. But this is a fantastic movie. It's also a fantastic looking movie. Like one thing that struck me straight away, I know I mentioned briefly to you just before we started recording, when I went to watch this, I started watching it on like a small screen laptop, and after about 2 minutes, I just said, "No, no way! This movie looks way too good to be watching on like a little laptop screen." So I immediately switched on the big TV and watched it, and that's how it deserves to be watched. I would highly recommend to anybody if you're going to watch this movie, watch it on a big screen because it's a spectacularly shot movie. The cinematography in it is just beautiful, and it deserves to be watched on a big screen so you can just see how impressive looking it really is.
Indeed, it is. Good on you, mates. And it kicks off in which I forget when I rewatched this because the first time I watched it, I lived in Victoria, but now I live in Perth, and it kicks off in Western Australia in 1915, May, my birthday month, actually.
Oh, yes, and before we get into just the movie itself, so in the credits, I did notice at the beginning of the movie that one of the producers is Rupert Murdoch. Is that the Rupert
Yeah,
Murdoch?
I assume so because I don't know the other one.
Yeah, so the big cheese himself had a hand in this movie. Who'd have thunk it? Suppose at least he has his name attached to something good, so good for him. But yeah, yeah, Rupert Murdoch. There you go. So we're introduced here straight off the bat to one of our two main characters. His name is Archie, I believe, and
Yeah,
he's out here in rural Western Australia, and he's out with his uncle, and he's in the middle of training. He's a professional runner, or maybe perhaps an amateur runner who's looking to become a professional, maybe go to the Olympics or something like that. But he's
yeah. It reminds me of the film I watched a few years ago. The one direct, I forget the name of it. It had the real life guy was named Louis Zamperini, Italian guy. It was directed by Angelina Jolie, but he was a guy who was like a semi-professional runner going up to Olympics, but also went off to war and stuffed up his Olympic career. And that was a good war film I watched at the cinema. But
but
yeah, it's
yeah,
very
so
fast.
he's sorry, go ahead there.
But also a bloody twit when they decide to run barefoot across the sort of hilly range and back to the
Yes,
farmlands. Gets his feet all cut
yes,
up like an absolute idiot.
a very foolish move. So yeah, so this young man Archie, he's been trained by his uncle, at running, and we're led to believe he's actually very skilled and very good and just an all round natural athlete. But he also seems to be working as a rancher for his father, so lots of cattle herding and the like on horseback, and he is having a bit of a back and forth with one of the ranch workers who's giving him a little bit of guff, and he's kind of being snide. He's saying things like, only women run. If you're a man, you'd be boxing. That would be the type of sport you'd be doing. And he's kind of mocking him for being a runner. But they make this bet between them, basically, that Archie can outrun him on foot and make it back to the farm before he could on horseback. Now, the conditions, though, of this bet are that Archie will have to run barefoot across country to get back to the farm. Now, he does manage to win the bet. He runs barefoot and makes it back to the farm before his rival. However, in the process, he completely just slices and dices his feet to bloody ribbons, as anybody would if you're running bareback, across this type of landscape. It is going to like mess your feet up big time. So when he gets back home, his uncle is just really just shaking his head in bewilderment because they're only a few days away from running in a big race, and he's worried now that Archie is kind of backed up his chances of actually winning because he's after like mashing his feet, mangled his
Yeah.
feet, running cross country here. And I have to say, I do side with his uncle in that respect. Like it was a stupid thing to do.
Yeah,
We
I've
also
never
know,
mangled
yeah,
my feet that bad, but I mean, I have cut them on broken glass, barefoot in the park, bee stings, lots of stuff. Not as bad as that, but it's like okay, it's my own stupid fault, making up my feet.
it just looks really nasty. His just feet are all cut up and busted up. Like it just looks very, very painful.
Yeah,
We
you
see
know,
as
as a
well
quick,
during
yeah,
they're having a little bit of supper here, and even though Archie's uncle is quite encouraging towards him being a runner, his own father doesn't seem too interested in it. He's more interested in him getting back to work on the farm and helping with the ranch. He's not overly keen on his son becoming a runner.
yeah. I'll do a quick sidebar here because I just learned something I didn't know about as far as this Murdoch business. And apparently, the father of Rupert Murdoch and the Murdoch clan itself went off in search of war stories in this era for the Sydney papers back in the day, and came back with a bit of war tales and porcupines that apparently been mythologized somewhat as far as what actually went on versus the real world. And Gallipoli, while an excellent film, does kind of stretch the truth a little bit in some of the details. However, none of that takes away from the actual campaign that a lot of people went off and sadly died, and has become a big cultural part of Australia and New Zealand as far as the Anzacs being the combined forces, Australia and New Zealand going off and with the British troops, of course.
So yeah, and these opening moments were introduced to Archie, and we get a kind of good picture of his home life, his family life, and his whole ambition towards running, and his uncle training him and all that. But we quickly switch locations to where we're introduced to Mel Gibson's character, whose name is Frank Dunn. So he's an Aussie of Irish descent here in
Yeah,
this movie, and he's working the railroads, and he's working with a few other guys, and they're all pretty fed up of their working conditions, and pretty much the entire friend group is talking about signing up to the army and joining the war. They're all looking to get out of this railway work they're doing and go off and fight. But Frank, he doesn't really seem to show much interest in doing that at all. He's like, no, you guys are crazy. Why would you want to go to the trenches and get shot? And they're all kind of making fun of him and just giving him guff for not wanting to go and do it. But one thing they do all agree on is that they are all sick of working on the railroads. So
Yeah.
when the train comes by, they all grab their bags and they literally hop on a carriage and get a free ride out of there, all while their boss is screaming and cursing at them, saying that they'll never work for the railroads again because they've just walked out on them in the middle of work. They've just all up and left and hopped on a train out of there. So
Good,
we
good bit of a dodge.
good getting out of Dodge big time, and straight away it's there's kind of like a fair contrast here between the character of Archie and the character of Frank. Like Archie, who we've just been introduced to earlier, seems to come from a very kind of stable family setup, whereas Frank here, he seems a little bit more of a veteran of the world. He's a little bit older than Archie, and as we can see, he's been working the railroads, so he might have a little more life experience and not be just quite as innocent as Archie in that respect. But both guys, they're about to come face to face here because in our next scene, we're brought to a beautiful location that's quite green and scenic, especially compared to the type of landscape we've been seeing so far. And it's like a local event. They're staging races,
Yeah,
and
this would be in the state of Victoria, I'm fairly sure, from the production and whatnot, where I've actually lived. So I've seen plenty of scenery looks just like this.
well, it looks beautiful, nice and
It's
sunny
the
in
greenest
Utah.
part of Australia that's not Tasmania, and the next greenest part of Australia is not Tasmania. It's called New Zealand. It's not just a colony. It's actually a country. It's very
Oh,
green. And the next greenest after that would be Ireland and Scotland.
wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me New Zealand and Australia are two different countries?
They actually are. They actually are like Australia. Some Australians will tell you different, but yeah.
So anyway, there's this it's like a bit of a local fair going ahead. There's races being run, and Archie, of course, he's been training hard as a runner, so he's entered in the race. But we also see here Frank Dunn has also turned up, and he's also quite the athlete himself, and he decides to enter himself in the same race as Archie. Now, unfortunately, though, for Frank, he's very confident in his own abilities and really thinks he's the fastest guy there. And he decides to bet 20 quid on himself with the race organizers that he's going to actually win the race. And unfortunately for him, he does not win the race. Archie, in fact, is the faster of the two and is the one who wins the race overall. So per Frank, he's down 20 quid, which is an awful lot of money, I'd imagine, back in 1915 to have lost on a bet.
Yeah.
Um, so after the race, Archie kind of tries to go up to him and say, "Oh, look, well done, good race, but hard luck or whatever." And Frank, he's just a bit miffed that he's kind of lost all his money, so he's not overly friendly to Archie when they first cross paths. But you know, also from winning this race, Archie, I believe he set some type of national record. Like he's really fast. Like he's done the race in an incredible time, and his uncle comes up to him afterwards. He's really happy with him. He's delighted. He's thinking, oh wow, like next step has to be, global competition. You're that good, but Archie kind of hits him with a whopper of a revelation. He tells him, "Look, I'm not running any more races, and I'm not even coming home. I'm going to go sign up, and I'm going to go fight in the war." So his uncle is like, "Well, I can't really stop you from doing what you want to do," but he's obviously none too happy about it. So the uncle sets off back home while Archie stays behind, and we then see the next morning as as Frank has spent the last of his money paying for his bed and board, he happened across Archie in a cafe, and he apologizes to him for being a bit of a bad sport in the race the day before, and they shake hands and they begin talking. And Archie can kind of see that Frank's a bit down on his luck because
Mm-hmm.
he even eats his unfinished food off the plate because he's no money to buy his own food. And prior to this, Archie has actually already tried to sign up, but he's ousted as being under 21, so he's not legally able to sign
Yeah,
up. So
credentials didn't work out.
yeah, so Frank says, "Hey, well, look, well, you can try and sign up again. Just that we're not going to try and sign up here. We'll sign up in Perth. It'll be like a different place, and they won't know that you've already tried to sign up. We'll fake your age, and we'll get you in." So
Get
the
your
two
wax
boys,
mustache, mate.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So look, the two boys, they kind of become fast friends. They catch a train and set off together. Unfortunately, they fall asleep in the carriage, and when they wake up, they realize they've literally been left in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
And the next train,
way out of town in the desert. It's like
yeah, in the
50
desert.
kilometers or something from town.
So there's a guy at a kind of tiny little station where they've woken up at, and he advises them that there won't be another train coming through that area for another 2 weeks. So Archie comes to the conclusion that they'd be better off going on foot across the desert to get to
Which is a hell of a
civilization.
risk when you got no water and no food, walking like a long fucking distance across the desert, not knowing where you're going and getting spun around and facing the wrong direction.
Oh yeah, and it must be pointed out also that Frank realizes this is not really a good idea. He's like, look, we're going to get cooped out there in the sun. What's going to happen if we run out of water? And voicing a lot of concerns that most
Yeah.
people would voice. But Archie, he is steadfast in his determination. He's no, we're going to do this. We're going to make the walk. If we run out of water, I can find water. I can use my watch to tell the direction of the sun, and yada yada. I'll find our way there. So we're kind of getting the impression that when it comes to Archie, he is all about kind of moving forward and having that determination to take
Yeah.
risks to get what he
If
wants
I
to
had the
do.
water and
Whereas,
the compass and you're young, I'd go, yeah, you can do it. But if you're in the wrong direction and no water, you're really fucked.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, look, you wouldn't convince me to do this. I'd wait 2 weeks for the train to come. I'd sit in that shack with that old dude and just wait the 2 weeks. No, no way am I going out in that. Like, not a chance. But luckily
what,
for
what,
them,
what you'd really want, like best preparations would be if you've got some water, a compass, walk all night, sleep in the day. But in the day, you need to make a shelter from the sun because the sun will burn and dehydrate you in the desert. You need to like basically dig a hole or something to sleep in the day and then travel all night. And that's actually the best way to do it.
yeah, it's well, look, they're walking like 50 kilometers or something. I wouldn't have even made it 10 in that heat. I'd be lucky to even make it 5 before I turned
Yeah,
into like a
last
human
time I walked
nomadic.
10 kilometers when my car broke down out of town.
Yeah, no chance, no chance. But luckily for the two lads, they happen across a man on a camel who gives them some water and a little bit to eat, and
He's a
also
nice
advises
fella
them.
to actually share that water with them because he probably needed that.
Exactly, yeah, a really nice fella, and he advises them that there's actually a property only 10 miles away that they can make there, by
Yeah,
foot. So the two lads set off and they come across this property. It's like a nice farmhouse owned by a very well-to-do family, and the two lads are invited in for dinner. The daughters of the household seem very, very keen on these two handsome young men who've just wandered in from the desert
yeah.
and are
Reminds me of
all
that
too keen
Seinfeld
to.
one where Kramer and Newman broke down the mail track and came across that farmhouse.
So the two lads, they get all dappered up and they're having dinner with this family. And one thing is quite clear is that when Archie reveals that he intends to sign up and go fight in the war, is that the family are really just they're really just enamored with him, and they think he's so brave. And when Frank mentions that he's not really interested in the war, and he's just heading to park to do some business, you can see that they kind of think a little bit lesser of him. It's a kind of a repeat of the scene we got earlier with Frank and his friends on the trains. It's like this is the second time now where he's been kind of admonished somewhat, or at least made feel a little bit bad that he has no interest in going off and fighting in the war.
He's got the registry of birth there, and he scratches off the ink and changes it so that Archie can appear to be older than he is and head off for the war.
That's right. And Archie, him and Frank, they kind of have a heart-to-heart that night after the dinner, and Frank starts to kind of have different thoughts about signing up. And unfortunately for Frank, even though he's a good runner, he's not very proficient with riding horses, whereas Archie is very proficient at doing it. And Archie is intending to sign up for the light horse, like the on horse kind of regiment.
Oh, that's the other Aussie classic film. You've got Gallipoli, the Light Horsemen, and Breaking Morant are kind of an Anzac trilogy, different directors, different, but all in the same era. I thought over the next couple of years we could do an Anzac week thing, on those films.
Definitely. Well, look, if this film's anything to go by, then I've a lot to
the other two are just as great as this film, like absolute classics.
So yeah, you were mentioning there about the altering of the birth certificate. So once they leave this house, they manage to make it to park where Frank's uncle is actually living. So they're able to kind of bunk in his house, and while they're staying there, Frank begins the process of making Archie look a bit older. He's kind of like rubbing kind of dirt on his face, and he puts like a big
doing his
kind
face.
of mustache.
He does like the old wax mustache and super glues on above his lip because he's pretty young. He's not really growing much face fuzz,
Oh yeah, he's a total baby faced youngster. But Frankie helps kind of make him look a bit older by giving him some scruffy fake facial hair. But once again we see another kind of important figurehead in these young fellas' life is another uncle, and this time it's Frank's uncle, because they're staying in his house, and Frank's kind of explaining, oh look, we're making Archie look a bit older so we can both go and sign up tomorrow. And Frank's uncle is like, well, why are you going to fight a war? It's a British war, and the British hung your own father. They hung your grandfather in Dublin. So obviously this guy, he's of Irish descent. We've had our trouble with the Brits in the past, and he can't understand.
Sure.
He can't understand why his nephew would want to actually go off and fight for them. But Frank's like, no, look, I'm going to go do it. It's going to be fine. I'll go do a tour. I'll learn a trick or two. I'll come back home. What's the worst that could happen? So
it's a real coming of age thing in this film where they're quite naive and they've kind of bought into war propaganda and such. It's a very much of its era sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and you can really see how peer pressure and how the kind of perceived importance of other people's thoughts about you are really influencing these guys. Not so much with Archie, but definitely with Frank. Frank went from at the beginning of the movie being not in any way interested in participating in the war to now all of a sudden he's about to go sign up. So it just goes to show you that like that influence that so apart from you've got your propaganda, and then also just the people who've been influenced by that or influencing other people who may not have necessarily ever had a thought about signing up or joining up
it's
or
like
anything like that.
Top Gun. It's like, come on, lads, sign up.
But so look, they go to another army sign up place, and unfortunately for poor Frank, as I mentioned earlier, he can't ride a horse for shit. He's useless at it. So when he goes to try out, for the light horse, he can't even get the horse to move, and everybody makes a laugh out of him, and he kind of saunters off dejected. Whereas Archie, who is an excellent horse rider, because of his work on the ranch. He's very experienced, so he gets the gig straight away. He gets signed up. We also, I believe, this is where we get to see for the first time. It's like the Major Barton is his name. He'll
Yeah,
be kind of another main character in this movie. He's kind of over the recruiting. So even though Archie goes on to join the light horse, Frank still manages to get in. The only difference is he joins the infantry. And the reason he ends up joining the infantry is because after his failed attempts to join up with the horse regiment, he's sitting in the bar, he's drinking, he's miserable. When all of a sudden he comes across his three friends from earlier who he'd been working the railroads with, and they're all like, "Hey, well, look, we're signing up for the infantry. Just sign up to the infantry with us." And so Frank's like, "Yeah." So
might as well.
the four mates all sign up together, and before we know it, it's off to Cairo for a bit of
Yeah,
training.
not not as good as a wink to a dead dingo.
Yeah. I have to say, the whole training in the desert in front of the pyramids was really cool. All these scenes kind of
Yeah,
coming up
here's where we switch from on location shooting in Australia over to actual Cairo. I mean, you can see the Sphinx and actual pyramids there, so it's real location shooting. No green screens, including
no
the running
green
up of the
screens.
pyramids.
And there's something very surreal about watching people play like a game of rugby right in front of a pyramid. It's just,
Rugby and cricket apparently. I'm not
yeah,
sure
you just
exactly much of the film, but if you look at the actual Gallipoli campaign, there were people that played rugby and cricket on location in Egypt and slash Cairo.
and so yeah, the lads they're playing rugby, they're having a good time. They're told, they're informed by their superiors that they're going to be let loose on the streets of Cairo for a little bit of R&R, and they're warned, not to drink too much of the local liquor because it can be quite dangerous. And they're also warned about
Uh,
the local
that
women.
just what makes me drink it even more.
Yeah, they're warned about the local women, who may not be the cleanest. You might come back home with after catching something, and you're going to have to make an awkward explanation to your wife as to why you were
You
sent back
might.
from the war
They're
early.
quite lovely.
But well, look, I'm sure most men would like
Might
to
run into
indulge in the
Princess
sights and the
Jasmine over
sounds.
there.
And I believe, yeah, so there's we get to see lots of action with the lads. They're wandering the streets, they're drinking, they're buying souvenirs, they're going into the Hur house where
They're riding
yeah,
around
they
on
see this.
donkeys and just like flipping off the British lads on the
Yeah,
horses, which I love.
that's right. Yeah, the British Army guys are disgusted at how these Aussie
Oh,
guys are carrying on.
how unpolite and disgusting these Australian lads! Quite rude.
But look, and look,
Very
I
true to
know
life.
I'm sure I sound like a pervert or whatever, but
Yeah.
who cares? I'll say it anyway. Like some of the women, man, and these kind of bazaars and stuff they're going into, like, oh, you'd be having a great time, no doubt, no doubt. I would definitely be partaking in that action if I was a young man of 21,
Yeah.
and who knows what could happen in
Why
the coming
wouldn't you?
weeks.
You might be dead tomorrow.
Exactly, exactly. Who cares about the STDs when you could be shot in the next week? But we get so after we see the scenes of the lads wandering the streets of Cairo, we are brought back to the desert where they're going to perform a training exercise, and the objective of the training exercise is to kind of simulate attacking a trench. So the infantry guys are advised that the members of the light horse regiment are going to be playing the role of the enemy, and that they have to attack their trench. So we got this big training exercise, and both sides are firing kind of blanks at each other, and it's almost like a war simulation where people are falling down pretending to be dead, and pretending
Yeah.
to bayonet their opposition and
High
whatnot. But
level Doom if you're doing like, practice campaigns or Call of Duty or whatever.
yes, exactly. And it's at this moment during this exercise that Frank and Archie's paths cross again, and they're reunited. You know, they're delighted to see each other, and you know, Archie's surprised that Frank ended up signing up for the infantry anyway, and it's just a real kind of happenstance that they've both kind of been reunited again and are back together again. And you know, Frank, he's really keen just to stay hanging around with Archie, and Archie kind of wants him to kind of stay with him. So they somehow managed to convince the major, who's kind of running the show, that that it would be a good idea to let Frank transfer into the same unit as Archie. And the major, he's definitely one of the kinder characters in the movie. He seems to like both the lads, and he also kind of knows that they're both you know, runners, and you know, he likes the idea of them. You know, they explain to him, look, that we train together and we know each other from before we both signed up. And the major does eventually manage to pull a few strings and get Frank into their unit. Not much to the chagrin though of Frank's mates, who think he's, you know, abandoning them just to go be with the posh light horse boys, and leaving all their kind of infantry guys behind. But you know, it's not like that. Frankie, he just wants to be with his friend Archie, and
Yeah.
you know, he's willing to do what has to be done to get there. And we got another before the shit really hits the fan, and before the lads are pushed out into the war, we do get some more kind of final moments of R&R, where they're attending like this kind of ball. It's really supposed to just be for high ranking officers, but the two guys get to come in anyway because the major has a soft spot for them, and they're drinking champagne and living it up and dancing with all the lovely young girlies
You got to have
that
a
are also
wartime
attending.
ballroom scene. I mean, it's kind of obligatory, I think.
Oh yeah, tradition, and you have to have the confetti raining down and the slow
Yeah.
dance, and
Makes me think of
yeah,
Das Boot before they go off from the submarines. Like, well, we got to have a big dance, get some instruments in there.
yeah, we need to lighten things up a bit here. You know, you could all be dead tomorrow, so
Yeah. And that's the
yeah, and it's
contrast, really. It's like it's all shenanigans and having a good time, and then the horrors are coming tomorrow.
yeah, so we'll be leaving the Cairo locale before the guys set sail for Gallipoli. But I suppose before we move on to that moment, I just like to take a moment again just to say the scenes that were shot in Cairo, around the pyramids, around the streets of Cairo, all spectacular looking locations. And once again, I really have to reiterate to anybody who hasn't watched this movie, if you ever are going to watch it, make sure that you watch it on a big screen, because
Mm.
your eyes will just be treated to a feast of visuals. Even the
And
interior where they're having the big bowl there, even that's shot beautifully. And like when the confetti is raining down from the ceiling at the end, it just looks beautiful. Like it's really
and that
impressive cinematography.
that Cairo lighting, I mean, I can't say one way or another, but I assume it will be natural outdoor lighting because it's like the light we get here in Perth, which is 10, 12 hours a day of sunlight, where it's just super bright and you got to look at the bloody ground where you get blinded without sunglasses on. So you just, the sunlight really shows up spectacularly in these scenes with all the sand and the blokes in uniform and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. Yeah, because yeah, like there's fuck all people with, you know, sunglasses. I guess back then nobody has sunglasses. If you don't have a hat,
I
you're
only wear them
fucking
when
really.
driving because you cannot drive in Perth without sunglasses. Like you literally get blinded and get cataracts. You can't see a damn thing on the road. But when I walk down the street, I don't wear them. But there's certain suburbs here like Fremantle that settled by Italians and Croatians. They use a lot of white pigment in the cement, which is like a fucking mirror. When you walk out there in the morning, it reflects all the sunlight down and straight up into your eyes. You've got to wear sunglasses, but I don't, as a rule, generally wear them. So I don't know. Expect me to get cataracts in the next 10 years, I guess, because I don't wear them other than driving.
I try to wear them, but I usually forget to bring them with me because
Yeah,
you wake up here, and I know I'm getting totally sidetracked here, but you wake up here, it's dull and cloudy. You
grey
don't even
like New
think about
Zealand.
them, and
He's
then
not
you
the
set off
ex-punk.
on
He
the
hasn't
road.
got the glasses on.
Yeah. But like literally half an hour later, then the sun is like beaming down. It's like I'm
Yeah,
blind. I can see nothing. So yeah, the guys they set sail and we're shown the nighttime landings here at Gallipoli, which I imagine is a terrifying experience for anybody. Like I know we mentioned this, during Deer Hunter, like we're not ex-military or anything, so we've no frame of
no.
reference when it
If you
comes
don't do
to
nighttime landings, you're dead before you even get there. Like, forget about it.
yeah. But it's still probably a terrifying situation because even as they're making the landings, we see a lot of explosions going off. There's explosions on the beach. Um, there is always that kind of that dash from when your boat hits the sand of just you getting the hell out of the boat and getting onto land as quickly as you can, and hopefully you won't get blown up or cut down by a machine gun. And luckily for all the lads, or at least the lads that we're concerned about in this movie, being Frank and
Yeah,
Archie, they do make it there successfully. But yeah, once again, it's a really well done scene. Like you see, like kind of flares going up and lighting up the air. They got these like big spotlights, kind of shining on people, and yeah, just all the explosions and sounds of war in the air. It's quite the memorable moment.
yeah, it's good, and it makes me think of like Saving Private Ryan was like objectively not a great film, but the opening fantastic with the landing on the beach and all that. So I was recreating World War II as opposed to World War I, and that sense of impending doom, and it's just this absolute chaos. A beach landing from any kind of boat and getting out of there alive, making it to the camp, let alone getting into your unit or team and going off into trenches or mounting any kind of campaign. It's just absolute fucking madness. It's like it's horrible, horrible. Would not wish anyone to be in this situation.
Yeah, not at all. And look, obviously, ultimate respect to the people who do sign up and you know fight for their country and serve for their country. It is a big deal. Like it's the reason why two schmoes like us are actually able to sit and chat about it over the internet is
Yeah,
because somebody else has
we'd
gone
be
and
dead in 2 seconds, man.
yeah, somebody else has gone and kind of done the fighting for us. So we're free decades later to be alive and to actually be able to talk about stuff in somewhat of a
Yeah,
light kind of casual manner.
it's a sad history if you want to look back at the last 1,000 or 2,000 years of human history. I mean, we're familiar with World War, this, that, and the other, and smaller skirmishes. But if you look at the actual history of the world, it's one of barbarism and violence and territories conquering and reconquering each other. It's always been going on. There's never a time in recorded history post caveman era when there's any kind of written or communicated language or cuneiform, what the fuck ever. There's always some kind of war or territory dispute going on. It's never not been going on, and anyone who's trying to tell you otherwise is basically making a fictional narrative where a bunch of fucking cavemen running around caving skulls in, but now we've got machine guns and nuclear bombs.
Yep. Yeah, we're really really good at killing each other as a race. We
Very
we
good,
excel
very
at it.
good, highly effective.
But so we after the landings we get to see a few scenes of just what life is like before we actually end up going into battle. So there's a lot of trench digging and just kind of getting established and getting set up. We see that there's a bit of a skinny dip and deep dive going on where a few of the lads are swimming down to go check out like a wreck and take some stuff from it. They're kind of placing bets on who's going to come up with the most booty and stuff. And all in all, these are probably we've kind of had like it's definitely been a bit of a journey so far, kind of tracking the lads as they've made their way here. But for these moments, we're kind of getting more of a situation where everybody's kind of settling in, getting dug in, preparing. There's kind of a lot of jovial kind of humor between all the lads. Frank's crew from the infantry end up showing up, so they're all reunited, and there's just your general kind of scenes of day-to-day camaraderie in between the kind of drudgery of preparing for battle. Like the lads are like drinking at night and playing football and just kind of trying to get through the days. And once again, though, while all this is going on, it's kind of re-emphasizing the kind of difference in personality between Frank and Archie, because Archie is really just all geared up to go over that trench and just get into battle and do his duty and do what needs to be done. Whereas Frank is still kind of like, well, like, I'm in no rush. Like, if I don't care if they ever give the order for us to go over. He's just happy enough to be there, to be alive, and to be doing what they're doing. Like, he's in absolutely no hurry to rush into battle, whereas Archie is really keen to see some action.
Yeah, it's I feel like it shows the everyday moments in civilian life and in war campaign life very well, like some of my other favorite war films, which we'll hopefully do over the next 12 months. Definitely come back to some war and westerns, showing just the grind and the mundane stuff of sitting around, going a bit stir crazy. It's like if you I mean, maybe this is a bad comparison, but if you've got a regular job and you go into work or at home, whatever, you've got your tasks to do, and when there's nothing to do, you go a bit nuts, you go a bit mental, because we're kind of, as human beings, as old caveman creatures, we're wired for action. We're wired to actually do things and achieve and give us tasks and stuff to do. When we don't have tasks and stuff to do, we go kind of nuts. We need to sleep and go to the toilet and whatnot. But otherwise, we need to be doing things, or we just things don't work well on our brains and nervous system. And you get that sense here, even when doing things could result in your ultimate demise, you're still kind of keen to do it, because I'm like, well, we've travelled all this way, and going to war is basically our job instead of working on the railways, and we need something to do. And it's a real kind of crazy town as far as actual wars and that, but it's a human impulse to want to actually achieve or do something, and when you don't have something to do, it just drives you crazy.
Yeah, if it was me, I would have been trying to get my hands on some of that Turkish hashish with a past $20, I'm sure. I'd be
Just don't
be
go
running past
assassinating
them.
people, Mark. That's what I've heard about you. You're bloody assassinating people left and right.
But so we see after these kind of scenes of the day-to-day drudgery of being camped there, we see that Major Barton is having a meeting with the other top military brass, and they're telling him, look, tomorrow we're going to launch an attack. We're going to try and take this Turkish position. We're going to shell the location. We're going to use the ships to kind of lay down a barrage, and we're going to try and clear as much of the Turks out of the area as we can with this barrage. So hopefully there won't be, people manning the guns, and you'll just be able to send your lads over the top. And of course, the way these big brass dudes put it over, it's like, it's really simplified. Like, the
Yeah,
shelling is going to cause them to retreat back, and then your men will just be able
well,
to
go
make it
here, do
over
this, do
into
that.
the.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, simple. Like, what could possibly go wrong? But we can see that the good Major Barton is kind of a little bit dubious about this whole situation. He's a lot of questions, but any of his questions, they're immediately kind of cut down and fobbed off, because the top brass, they just want the operation to go ahead, and they're not really interested in hearing what his reservations are about it. So we're getting a bit of a change in mood now in the movie, because we're kind of closing in on kind of the
Yeah,
big deal happening.
close it in. And before we get to that, they have a bit of a naughty and the nutty swim, checking out the old shipwrecks in the ocean. A bit of larrikinism as far as the Aussies go, and just sort of mucking about. they see this corner, which is kind of like this death corner. If you poke your head around there, the machine gunners up on the hill are just going to take you out pretty quick. And before we take you out pretty quick, we're going to take you guys out pretty quick with a little ad break and then come back. Goes for about 2.5 minutes, and then we'll be right back.
Place you never heard of comes a story you'll never forget. Gallipoli.
And here's how it works. I'm going to ask you 4 questions about the film you've just seen. 4 questions. They're not difficult, but being able to count to 4 helps. Ready? Good. During one of my early broadcasts in the film, I made a little joke about warum haben die Deutschen so eine hartliche Sprache? That's speed.
Back to that room.
Apologies for the technical difficulties there, but back to our regular show.
Yeah, well, folks, I'm sure as you've seen from that trailer we played, it's a spectacular looking movie. Just an awesome looking movie.
Very well shot. I'd easily put it in my top 10 like war films of any decade or era. Great film.
Well, and I've no doubt, and I know we haven't gotten to the end yet, but I've no doubt already that I will rewatch this film again and probably again and again because, like I said, it's probably something that should have been in my kind of viewing library a long time before this. I'd love to actually get
I'm just as guilty of so many classic films and certain directors and eras, and I work my way through ones, and I've got to get back to them and come cycle around again and see what other films they do, and you know.
So Major Barton, he's gotten word that this big attack is going to go ahead. So the preparations shall begin, and once again we get some more kind of scenes between Frank and Archie where, you know, Frank is just really not keen, you know, to do this. And I suppose nearly the whole film's really kind of been this story of where Archie is kind of being bound and determined to go forward, to join the military, to do what he has to do. Frank has just been, you know, reserved about the whole thing. You can just tell he's not really keen to want to go ahead with it when it comes to the actual fighting aspect of the war. But we do get the see that, you know, Major Barton, he needs a runner to essentially be able to run between their two camps to relay messages between the top brass and to forward on orders and the like. So because he knows Archie is a good runner, he originally selects him to be that designated guy. But Archie, he actually instead, because he knows that Frank is a bit fearful and hesitant about going over the trench, he actually suggests to Major Barton that he pick Frank to be the runner instead. Because Frank, look, he may not be as fast as Archie, but he's probably the second fastest guy there altogether. Like he's still
Yeah.
an excellent runner himself. So Major Barton, he ends up kind of going along with Archie's request. He switches them around, so Archie's still going to be going over the trench with the rest of the guys, but Frank's going to be staying behind to run the messages in between the two camps. So, look, obviously, if you're Frank in this situation, there's a sense of relief, but also you're worried about your mate who's going to be going in there without you. So who knows what's going to happen? But so look, the barrage begins. They start laying down heavy fire on the Turkish position, trying to clear them out. But Major Barton notes that when the cannons stop firing, they seem to have stopped firing early. Like they stopped firing like a good few minutes before they were supposed to. And the Major speculates that this is actually going to give the Turks time to get back into position and back to the mounted machine guns. And he relays this kind of thought back to the top brass, and the top brass are like, doesn't matter. We've barrage has taken place. The operation still has to go ahead. Your men are going to go over the trenches, and that's going to draw the Turkish fire basically if there's any there. But hopefully there won't be any there because, like we said, the barrage has already taken place. But the Major just knows, like, he just does not have a good feeling about it at all. But he complies with the orders, and the first group of men begin to go over the trenches, and they are violently and viciously cut down by the Turkish machine guns. I mean, they are just, it is like a meat grinder in the Bavarian sense.
Yeah,
They just
absolutely
get
meat
the absolute,
grinder.
yeah.
This is where
These
the
guys,
chain of command breaks down on the ground, where like you've got guys running with bayonets and rifles a long distance, and at the other end you've got embankments with people with entrenched machine guns. So they don't stand a chance. There's no way they're going to advance or get much of anything done.
oh, no chance. And yeah, you mentioned the bayonets there. Like it's one aspect of this type of trench warfare that I always kind of forget about, but you can even see in the moments before they're about to head over, there's a guy going around advising everybody to unload their rifles because they're only expected to use their bayonets anyway. And you're kind of thinking, like, who the hell ever thought that, like, there was ever going to be success in this type of battle strategy? But like, I guess that's the story of
Yeah,
World War One anyway. It's just constant, like, that, just to
it's
gain a few
just,
yards
well,
here and
it's
there.
it's a story of ignorance where you've got unevenly matched folks with machine guns versus bayonets. It's like machine guns versus someone with no weapons at all.
So the first couple of waves of lads head over the trench, and they are unmercifully just gunned down, torn to shreds, turned into Swiss cheese, completely destroyed by these machine guns. So the Major, like, he's no idiot, he can see what's going on. So once again, he phones up to the top brass, the guy above him or whatever, and he's like, look, this is just a massacre. It's like cold-blooded murder sending these guys over. I'm not sending any more over. I want confirmation that these machine gun turrets are going to be taken care of. And the guy on the other end's like, nope, no. The main general wants this still to go ahead. And the Major's like, well, right, back it. So before he decides to give the order, he grabs Frank and he says, look, I want you to run to the camp where the general is stationed, and I want you to tell him verbally what's happening here, like what exactly has just been happening on the ground, and what we think is going to happen next. So Frank, he goes to do the run, and as you know, as part of this run, he actually has to go past the machine gun death spot that you spoke about earlier on, like in order
on the corner.
to kind of, which, you know, he's able to just about get across without getting himself completely shot to shit. He makes it all the way to the general's camp, and he runs in, and he's like, look, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. You really have to understand what's going on the ground here, and, you know, pull off this next phase of the attack. So the general, he seems kind of taken aback by what Frank says. So he's like, okay, you know, go back and tell the major that we're going to postpone it. So Frank, he sets off, and he is running like a goddamn MFer trying to get back there in time. But unfortunately, in the meantime, you know, Major Barton, he raises his whistle to his mouth, and he draws his gun, and just as Frank gets back to the trench to give him the news about the, you know, postponing the attack, unfortunately the attack has already gone ahead. Everybody piles up over the trench, including Archie, who makes it further than anybody else there. Like, while everybody else is kind of getting gunned down around him, and don't forget, he's a really fast. He's, you know, an excellent sprinter.
Yeah, he's
and
in the Olympic style runner,
yeah,
but he's
and the
still
whole
running
time,
towards bullets.
he's still running towards bullets, and as he's running, you know, he's kind of repeating the training exercises that him and his uncle would go through, where it's like, you know, my legs are like steel springs, you know, and I'm fast as a leopard. And he's kind of repeating this to himself. And, you know, like you said, he maybe makes it about like 30 yards maybe before getting gunned down. And it's a
Yeah,
tragic, it's the final moment of the movie. And it really does kind of hit you, because you're kind of, you know, in some war movies, there can be an ending after the ending. So you kind of see the aftermath of what the war and what happened and whatnot. But here, the movie literally ends on the freeze frame of Archie getting shot in the chest by the machine gun, and
and
it's
the
a
way
really, really powerful image.
he's getting shot, he's arching backwards like this.
Yes,
It's deliberately framed like as if he's in the Olympics going through the little
ropes.
line and tearing through the thingamy.
Yes, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because even the major firing the gun for them to go over the trenches is like exactly almost shot for shot the same as earlier on in the movie, when the referee for the race fired the starting gun for them all to run the race. So you get that kind of parallel there as well, with the pistol being used to kind of, you know, get
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
to jump into
There's a,
action.
there's a deliberate thing, the symbolism showing like this guy who was a runner and could have been Olympic hopeful, but now he's in the war and the shot and the pistol and the arching of the back. That's very deliberate symbolism.
And I could see that, like, it's once again, it's, you know, there's a lot of kind of famous war movie posters, and I always kind of think about the one for Platoon, where it shows like Sergeant of the Lines got his hands raised in the air as he's
Yeah,
being
like
kind of gunned down.
or Tropic
And
Thunder.
yeah, but this image of Archie, wow, it definitely sticks with you. And I noticed there, when you played the ad block with the trailer, the kind of freeze frame and silhouette of that moment of him being shot was actually
Yeah,
the poster for the movie, which is an excellent movie poster.
yeah, it's very
Um,
very cinematic.
but yeah, and look, it's like, and I know, you know, I'm sure there's people who have watched this film, and probably people like yourself who've watched it a bunch of times, who've probably listened to
Mm.
me skip over so many bits and pieces, and I know I've lost a lot of context, and even when it comes to certain characters' names and moments. I did only watch the movie for the first time a couple of days ago,
We've done
and
bloody
there's
well
so much
recalling
to it.
so much of it just now. Better
Oh,
than
but like
me. You've seen it multiple times.
this goes back to, like, I do need to rewatch this again, because I want this to be one of those movies that's like burned into my skull. Like it's that it's that good a movie that it deserves to be,
It pulls
almost
you back in.
memorized. Oh yeah, and like I'm just kind of so happy you suggested it, because God knows if I ever would have gotten around to watching it,
Yeah,
which is
well,
another great thing
a bit of
about
a
doing this show.
shout out to old Zazel Logan Phoenix, who organised earlier this week in Anzac Day, which is a holiday here, themed live stream, which was kind of a last minute thing across various channels. But because he mentioned that a week beforehand, he's like, "Oh, let's do this," and like maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. I went, I was going to get to this movie eventually, sometime in the next 12 months, because I just love this film. And they went, well, what's Anzac with this week? Like, why not? I'll bump off WrestleMania or whatever the film we're doing this week, do this, and then we can do the other thing the following week. Thanks also to Zazel Logan Phoenix for actually inspiring me to do this one in this particular week rather than 6 months from now or whatever.
I know it was great, for me just to see Mel Gibson again, still looking young and fresh faced like he did in the first Mad Max
Tim,
movie.
nice but dim. He's in the film named Tim right back in this era. That's why I say that.
Yeah, he's still very baby faced and
real baby face.
Still got his
Tim
accent.
and Mad Max in this era, the original first one.
But yeah, like as a movie, it's so impressive and really just kind of conveying the horror of trench warfare. Like my description of these scenes does not do it judy. Believe me, boys and girls, and anybody watching, you really need to, at the very least, if you don't watch the whole movie, which you should, but if you don't, go on to YouTube. There are still some of the battle scene clips up there, and just to see the actual brutality of, how these guys were just mowed down one after another by these
It's
machine gun
horrible, man.
encampments.
It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah,
But
it's just a nightmare scenario, an absolute nightmare.
Absolutely. And Mel Gibson back then had lived in Australia a number of years, so he has the traditional Aussie accent where it's not country ochre style. It's like more subdued and authentic of the times and the place he's living in. So I like that about it, because he was born in New York and American, but lived in Australia for a number of years and had that Aussie accent. And then you see him later American films, I don't know, Lethal Weapon and whatnot. He has more of a broad accent. But even if you watch the first couple of Lethal Weapons, you can still hear the Aussie style in his voice. And he was potentially up for the lead role in this film, played by the young blonde guy. But the director, Peter Weir, to his credit, went, well, no, I really want a genuinely naive young Aussie guy to be the lead guy, not someone else who's Gibson from New York. So Gibson was potentially going to be the other role, but they went with the other young fella, or the blonde fella.
Well, I'd still consider him to be a main character, and it's still a story of both boys in a sense, both guys.
Absolutely. But like as you said towards the start of the talk, Gibson plays a slightly older, more worldly experienced character, whereas the young blonde guy, I mean, both are naive in a worldly sense, but the young blonde guy plays that real coming of age, innocence, John Hughes' teen American film thing, where we're going through a transition. But this transition isn't going to the ball and dance, which we had a bit of a ball, but this is the war afterwards and not going to the prom afterwards.
Yeah. And we mentioned Deer Hunter earlier. There's one kind of thing that both movies have in common is that the war scenes probably make up overall like a small amount of the actual movie time.
Yeah, maybe like 1/4.
Exactly. Whereas
it's more like a coming of age, genuine tale, and the war's in the background.
Yes, and it's a story about friends and kind of what happens to friends
and mateship, which is a big Anzac thing.
Yeah, and I think though that human touch kind of makes the war scenes even more brutal, because you care about the guys by the time by the time they're going into battle. And I know we didn't dwell on it too much, or at least I didn't, but apart from Archie and Frank, like you do have the wider group of guys who we got to know, like from the guys who worked with them on the trains and stuff like that. So you do see quite a few, you know, likable characters that you've been brought on this journey with get killed. Obviously, the most brutal of the killings goes to Archie because he was like the main guy. But yeah, it's a real powerful film, and even
It
this
is. I feel it's very human. It's like old Springsteen songs. Like we all need a little of that human touch, and it really shows these young naive guys going off to war in a way that's not like falsely dramatic. It feels like very authentic to, like, you know, the style of the times and young fellas and whatnot.
yeah, and it's not like, you know, oh well, these two guys just got onto the battlefield and they kicked arse and they killed all the Turks
No,
by themselves and planted the flag and everything was just rosy, and then they went home and they got married and everybody just had a great time. No, there's none of that
no,
type of
it's not Pearl
propaganda.
Harbor with Ben Affleck. It's not that film,
Yeah,
which I did watch in the cinema. Good battle scenes, shit film.
I also I love this red font on black. It always looks great the
Yeah,
odd time
it's
you
like
see
the
it in a
blood.
movie.
It's just like the blood, but also another thing called the poppies that grew in various fields, and which, if you're a kid grew up in New Zealand, Australia, we used to have that Anzac. I mean, we still have Anzac Day, of course, but we've got Anzac Day, also Remembrance Day, at a different time. But I remember as a kid in primary school, we would get the poppies, and you'd pay 20 cents or 50 cents, and then you'd have the little plastic poppy thing, and you'd wear it on your shirt. Um, so, yeah, it very much makes you think that blood spilled on these fields, but also of these flowers growing up, new life also. And this end image here is an actual Anzac here at World War One. Image not from the film, but from actual true life cobbers here in the trenches with all the sandbags.
Lest we forget, and like literally the whole Anzac thing, like I'll hold my hands up for that as well. Like up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have really been that aware of it at all. Like I'd read about it briefly, and I do remember the odd kind of BBC News might do a piece on it here and there, but because of just where we live and all that, it was just not something that was like focused on where I live. So
Yeah, like when growing up in New Zealand, Australia, it's something's kind of. I mean, this might be the wrong words. Don't take offence, anyone who's been into actual war or combat or nothing. But it was drummed into us from a young age, so it's been somewhat mythologized right from primary age. But I think rightly so. So it's about mateship and camaraderie, supporting each other. It's not about, well, who fought what war and who won, who lost. It's about, like, well, actually giving a fuck in the world and actually supporting each other. Like, you know, that's the thing I take away from the Anzacs more than, I mean, no war is a good war ultimately, but I think it's a good thing for me that, you know, Anzac, Australia, New Zealand / British, there is a couple of historical inaccuracies in the film. They're fairly minor ones, and they're not, to me, they're not a big deal, but there's some stuff where they kind of paint the British in a bad light. But actually, like there's a scene where they go, oh, the British are on the beaches and they're sipping tea. I mean, if you look at the historical record, actually it was the New Zealanders who were arriving at that time on the beach. Not so much sipping tea. So there's a little bit of kind of argy-bargy in there, but I think the actual historical record shows the cooperation and camaraderie of British, Australian, New Zealanders at this time. And no war is a good war, but, you know, if you've got to go off and fight for your country or against another country, I mean, be a good human being. I mean, it's just, it really strikes a chord with me because we live in peaceful times. But, like, if we were conscripted or voluntarily went off, it's a conflict either way they look at it. You know, the Ottoman Empire and everything that went on before we got to Turkey and Gallipoli, and the history of the world is nations and territories conquering each other. I mean, who's ultimately the good guy, the bad guy? Nobody. We're all just bloody human beings trying to live life and get along with things.
yeah, and you know, I think it doesn't just hit you with like a black and white scenario anyway. Like one thing I'll say as an Irish
that's
person,
one of the strengths of the film. I think it's not trying to be black and white. It's saying life is complicated. People are complicated. Shit happens, and we got to deal with it.
Yeah, and like I said, like as an Irish person, I actually did appreciate the moment where Frank's uncle was kind of chastising him about, oh, you know what, you're going to fight for the British, because that is a very Irish type of mentality, especially when he
Yeah,
mentioned the fact about his
Irish and
grandfather.
Scottish, like I mean, Australia, New Zealand, also colonies. Less, I guess, there's less persecution here. Whereas you look at the historical record, like potato famine, not a real fucking famine. They were exporting all the food overseas and fucking over people actually living on islands, starving to death. As you know, colonials and as serfs and whatnot. And you know, I'm sure if they could have fucked over Australia, New Zealand bigger time, they could have, but we were just further away as far as sailing your Spanish galleons and whatnot over here. Like the Irish and the Scottish, anytime I hear of horrible shit that happened through the British, which I also love and respect, but you know, at one time the British Empire was a thing, India, Scotland, Ireland. It hits me in my heart, man. I just think New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, Scotland, there's a real sort of brothership to me there as far as you know, historically what went on as far as the British Empire and colonies.
Yeah, no, I agree. But then again, I am the Irish Dragon, so
You are the Irish Dragon. You might be featured in WrestleMania 9. He's hanging out in the audience. You might do a run and you don't know what's going to happen. It's WrestleMania 9 on Boba Joe Show episode 44. But before that, we get Boba Joe Show episode 43. Transformers the movie, which I've hijacked the order once again for the last 3 weeks in a row. I've hijacked it, man. I've done a Russo. I've done a fucking Vince Russo. I've hijacked the order of the shows from what the original plan was. Because I'm just like, if we don't get a Transformers movie this week, it's going to be 6 to 12 months before we get to it. And I'm like, fuck it, we've got to do it. Because after Transformers movie and Boba Joe WrestleMania 9, I mean, we're going to be getting to some Alien and Predator, WrestleMania 10, getting into a bit of a Baimon sci-fi con as far as Alien Predator movies, the Dark Horse comics, the sequels, the Kenner toys and other shit. And after that, which will be a month or so on, probably get into some war and westerns like sort of First Blood and Platoon or maybe a John Wayne film. Plenty of cool shit coming up.
yeah, there's so much cool stuff out there. We will try and get to as much of it as we possibly can. I'm just looking forward to having a Transformers chat. I believe it was like way back in episode 2 or 3 was the last time we had a chat about Transformers.
Yeah,
so
but our favorite episodes of the Sunbow Marvel show. And I feel bad because we're both hardcore Transformers fans, and it's like all the shit we talk about is not Transformers.
Well, Transformers the movie is like one of my favorite movies, so I can't wait to talk about it.
We'll definitely do like an
about
actual toy-specific talk on Transformers at some point, but probably multiple ones. We can do like our favorite vintage Transformers toys versus our favorite modern Transformers toys or whatnot, or other post G1 shows, because there's so much fucking media and toys for that. You know, you could do 50 episodes of just bloody Transformers easily.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we don't want to oversaturate you with Transformers. We'll try and space it out over the months and years, you know.
That's on the B side of the record. You flip over Boba Joe and it's just all fucking Transformers.
B side. Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it, and it will be probably safe to say a little bit more lighthearted than what we spoke about today.
Absolutely. And I do like to alternate from like just like stuff we're into that's like fun, like WrestleManias and Predator and Aliens, and then stuff that's a bit more of a serious tone, like your First Blood or Gallipoli, whether it's a fictional character in the real war or realistically mostly real character in actual war. I love war films. I love westerns. We'll definitely touch on more of those, but we like to kind of keep it lighthearted and then touch on those things because, you know, the history of humanity is one of barbarous and horrible stuff, but we don't have to dwell on it every week. We prefer to talk about some more upbeat things, but not shy away from, you know, your taxi drivers, your First Blood, and other stuff like that. That can be quite depressing if you watch it too much, but are absolutely brilliant films worth watching.
Yeah, 2 movies I absolutely love, Taxi Driver and First Blood. So someday I also look forward to talking about them too.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little game pro tip, man. All the shit you see in that nonsense intro for the Boba intro from RoboCop, the Terminator, the Taxi Driver, Batman. We'll talk about all those fucking things eventually. That's why I put them in that stupid intro, because we'll get to them eventually.
And we've hit a few already. I'm sure keen-eyed viewers who watched that
We've
intro
done
will see
Robo 1 and 2.
Yeah, we did They Live. You know, we've hit a few. We will continue to do so.
I tells you, man, I knows you since you was your little baby. I knows you, man. I knows you.
Yeah, good old Roddy.
Oh, Macho Man's hat
He
fell
knows
off.
how they
Sorry,
live.
that's what clunky was. Okay, we better finish up, man.
Okay, guys, take care. Thanks for joining us, and have a good week and weekend.
Stay cool. So after school, don't pee in the pool. That's my tip.
Yeah. Road.